Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. This is Season 3, which is all about retention, and I am joined here with my co-host, Crystal Sweeney.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Before we get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this amazing podcasting space. So in this first 4 episodes of Season 3, we're talking all about the differences in each generation from boomers all the way up to Gen Z so that we can give you a base and a little bit of understanding about each generation before we follow into a lot more information and sharing and education around how that impacts company culture and employee retention. So today's topic is all about Gen Z. Can you tell us a little bit about Gen Z?
Yeah, so Gen Z, there is still a lot of research being done about this generation because they are just now entering the workforce. These are 20-year-olds and under. So, my kids are the Gen Z generation, and I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm like, okay, how is this going to impact the world when they actually reach workforce age? So, the biggest thing to remember about this generation is that they have grown up in a house that has lived through 2 recessions. We've had the big house market crash that happened, and then there was another recession after that. I'm not
right.
Sorry, up to date on that. But anyway, they are also very hyper connective. So this generation, they have actually grown up even now with young kids. They have a computer in their pocket. So, there's no longer just a computer sitting in the household, but, they have access to the whole world of information, just at their fingertips. So with that, they are very highly connected to what's going on in the world and everything that is going on.
Yeah, and my understanding is the majority of that generation, from the research so far, pretty much grew up with a computer. They didn't know a time without the internet.
Right.
They didn't know a time without a computer.
Right.
Most of them don't know how to use a rotary phone or know what to do if a phone is attached to a wall.
Nope.
Right. So very conceptually different. I think it's probably close to them not knowing a world without social media. Right. I don't know exactly when all of those were invented and where the Gen Z cuts off because they're still doing analysis on it. But there's a lot of things that they grew up with that were not the majority rule before. And that's a fundamental difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that social media, with them being able to, they're utilizing it to communicate with their friends. There's all the Snapchats and the Instagrams, and they're watching YouTube videos. These are some really big things that are happening right now, and that actually is setting them up for success in the workforce. They're talking about the fact that they're on Facebook and they're putting out posts, and they're looking for constant feedback. They're looking for people to be interacting with them at all times, and what that's going to do is in the workforce, that's going to create an expectation that they have on how well they're doing in their job. They're going to be looking for that feedback. They're going to want to build relationship with their coworkers and their bosses to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing and they're hitting all the right notes in their job. So, I think that's definitely something that's going to work to their favor.
Yeah, and with that, we're seeing that they're highly creative, highly efficient, right? Because they're used to that connectivity. They're used to the instant feedback. I think back to, so my oldest son is 12 now. I think he was probably 8. And he had an iPod Touch because we said we weren't getting a cell phone until 10, which I think was still a little too early. But he was 8 years old. He has this iPod Touch, and he can't really call anybody. It doesn't have cell, but he has Wi-Fi. And then he's chatting with his friend, and we're like, "Oh, well, how are you chatting with your friend?" "Oh, I found this application called Skype." And we downloaded Skype, and now we're talking. So, and they can hit call and call via Skype, right? They didn't, he's 8 years old and figures out that he doesn't even need a cell signal to have phone communication basically and video communication with one of his friends from school. And that really sets up a whole different mentality of connectedness and creativity and instant communication that previous generations really just started to experience throughout, the millennial generation.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a trait that Gen Z has, and I think a lot of us as parents are feeling it. As the children, the kids are learning technology faster than we are. They're knowing apps and things that they have access to help them do things a lot faster than we are. So that's definitely going to have an impact on advancements in the future and how fast that things are moving. They're going to be able to keep up and potentially leave others behind.
Yeah, move faster than ever before.
Yes, absolutely.
What are some other factors about Gen Z?
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to the creativity. I mean, you got to think about Instagram, Snapchat. They're constantly putting out. You're thinking of creative ways of communicating, creative ways of getting a message across. Memes are huge right now. So it's. The whole email thing is so long-winded now. I mean, Twitter, everything is very fast. What can you say in 5 words and 10 words in a picture? So with that constant creativity, I mean, they're going to bring a lot of that into the workplace.
Awesome. Any other items you want to share?
Yeah. So, with them being so globally connected, with everything going on in the media today and all of the, the different organizations and rights groups and just things that we are exposed to now that's happening all around the world, I think this generation is going to be, they're the most diverse group. They're going to be the most open group, and with that, most of them are going to have a purpose or an organization, or they want to be an advocate of something that really speaks near and dear to them. And that's going to be something that they're going to want to see in the workplace. They're going to want to make sure that what they're doing has purpose and has meaning, and how is their work going to impact the world that they are highly connected to. And so they're looking for those work values. And then going back to that they have had parents that lived through 2 recessions, I think typically they're going to be less likely to job hop like the millennials before them, because they're going to try to look for a more secure job. So they want to make a great impact, but I think that they're less likely going to be jumping ship from company to company. Once they find that company that really speaks to them, then they're going to want to stay there, and they're going to want to impact and make the world better.
Yeah, so we're seeing maybe, or at least the research is showing that, millennials may end up showing us the highest level of job hopping for a couple reasons we'll talk about in future podcasts. But then it's going to maybe level off a little bit there. Yeah. So with the Gen Z, also you said purpose, right? What is the purpose and passion? We've seen that come on strong over the years, but it continues to heighten that people they don't just want to show up and get a check, right? If you go back to traditionalists and boomers, you had a lot of the need to work, the requirement to work, long, hard days, to really pay for everything, and the spouse wasn't working. And then you start to progress into 2-income households. And then you start to get to Gen Z, where not only is it 2 household incomes, but it's not a lot of more for the sake of more. There is, we're seeing that there's some thresholds in which once people cross them from a financial perspective, they start to want to experience life a lot more and not show up for more hours or more pay or anything else. So we're seeing a progression all the way from boomers up to Gen Z that's indicating a lot of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Gen Z, because they value, what their purpose is and what they're doing, then they're not necessarily going to go for the highest paid job. They're actually looking for what their day-to-day experience is going to be. They're going to value that company culture that they're looking for, that they're going to just love to be at and work at, and driving towards the same goals. That's going to be very important to them. So not necessarily how much they're getting paid, but what are they experiencing? And there's been evidence to show that because this generation is wanting to actually stay in one job for a longer period of time than, say, the millennials, they're starting to save. So this generation is actually going to be saving a little bit more. They're looking for stability, and again, that just kind of goes back to the recessions that their parents have lived through. So each generation is learning, watching the generation before, and the good traits, the bad traits, what's going on in the economy, and they're making those adjustments, and it's actually the change shows in businesses.
Yeah, definitely. And that reminds me of, a little bit of what we talked about in season 2. We were talking about Salesforce providing 8 paid days off a year in addition to the normal days off in order to do give back, right? We're seeing that trend really resonating, and a lot of companies leading the charge on passion projects and giving back, and we continue to see that trend as a more and more important factor with millennials, and then even greater factor with Gen Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we hope this has been an educational session all about Gen Z. We look forward to getting into employee retention and how all of this information we're providing you comes together to create your company culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.